Module 6, The Kolb Cycle. Learning begins with experience. Thinking and reading are also experiences, but most often in these essays, concrete experience refers to some concretely physical happening, such as we do something, something happens to us, or we observe something happening around us. We then reflect on that experience. People have a natural tendency to mentally review important experiences shortly after they happen. For these essays, however, you need to re-examine earlier experiences in a focused way. Rather than just rewind and replay, you must ask yourself, why did it happen that way? What do I understand now that I might not have understood at the time? Then, in order to demonstrate college-level learning, you must take the step that most people don't consciously take, to analyze your specific personal experience for underlying generalizations that could be broadly applied, perhaps to other people in comparable situations. In many cases, you will also be able to identify ways in which you used these general concepts to affect subsequent decisions, even if you weren't fully aware of it at the time. For example, did I try something different the next time I had a similar experience? Please turn to the CD Workbook, Module 6, Slide 3. For most of us, real life seems to happen mostly in the upper hemisphere. We do something, and if it didn't work as planned, after a little reflection we try something else. In other words, trial and error. The academic world, by contrast, takes place mostly in the lower hemisphere. The focus is reflecting on theories and principles, and to a limited extent applying them in practice. Here is Kolb's model relabeled with elements of the PPA essay. The major lesson of the Kolb cycle is that describing your experience, in other words telling your story, is not sufficient demonstration of learning. Instead, you must balance experience and reflection with general concepts about the topic. Though the brainstorming and clustering process that led you to your subtopics began with experience, each subtopic in your essay does not have to start there. You can begin with a brief description of relevant aspects of the experience, no more than a couple of paragraphs, and then draw out the principles or generalizations, perhaps also showing how they have been or could be applied in other situations. But you can also start with a generalization about the topic, not about yourself, and then use your experience to illuminate those principles and their application. However, this knowledge must clearly derive from your reflection on your experience. That is why doing research prevents you from writing effective essays. Either approach is acceptable, so long as there is sufficient balance between experience and generalization. Particularly when writing general principles, remember that there is no college course about your life, so don't continue to use me and I when writing generalities. Not every paragraph should contain all the Kolb elements, but if your story stretches on for a page, that's bound to be more detailed than necessary to arrive at a general principle. If this is your first time through these modules, you now have enough information to tackle your first assignment. Though you may be tempted to see what lies ahead, it's probably more than you need to know at this point. It's like trying to learn to dance before you've learned to walk. You need to develop basic control of certain muscles before you can use them in more sophisticated ways.